welcome to another episode of Driveway Talk. I'm your host, Michael Willis, and happy to be with you again. And for starters, great news. We shot down the white balloon. Unfortunately, it wasn't to the liking of some on the right. The balloon was a Chinese spy balloon that the right wanted shot down immediately, but we didn't know what was in it. So, President Biden decided he would wait till it's over water. Now, this balloon came from China, flew through Alaska, then came through Canada, which had an opportunity to shoot it down as well, and then appeared over Idaho before we actually figured out what it was. Then it hovered over Montana and eventually made its way through the middle of the country out to the Carolinas, where off the coast of South Carolina, it was eventually shot down. Now, there is a plot twist to this. Turns out that there were three others that appeared during the Trump era, and they were ignored, not even made public. But yet, the right, they want to tear down Biden at every turn, and they're now attacking him for not shooting it down sooner. Basically, we didn't know what it was until it reached Idaho and Montana. But again, that's just one more tactic of their fear mongering and gaslighting and tearing down President Biden at every turn, no matter if it's right or wrong. But that also leads me into my subject for tonight: fear mongering and gaslighting. And typically, there are three main ways that the fear mongering and the gaslighting happens, or sources. There's three main sources of fear mongering and gaslighting. First is the media, and that's your print and television media. Second, politicians. That seems to be the way they do business now with certain groups. And then last but not least, social media. But first we'll discuss the media itself. Their job is to feed on bad news. The more bad news they feed you, the more ratings they get, the more clicks, the more they get paid. Recently, economy talk is a big thing. That's all the time, actually. They discuss the economy, they discuss the recession, inflation, and basically put fear into consumers and the American people by constantly repeating these words over and over. They lead the news with that: recession, recession, recession. And it actually turns out that we really didn't go into a recession. Now, inflation did happen. Try to go get some eggs, same price year and a half ago. Not going to happen. Gas is about where it was, but it went up quite a bit. Other things have gone up. Your typical grocery shopping bill is a little bit higher now. So inflation is there, but the recession really didn't happen. The American people are still spending. A lot of American people still have jobs. I do think a lot of tech companies prematurely laid off people because they bought into the recession. But for the most part, it really hasn't happened. We still have low unemployment and all the fiscal numbers are still good. Another way they promote fear mongering amongst the people: crime. They constantly lead their shows with crime stories. They lead with homeless, they lead with welfare, gun violence, and they have you thinking that certain groups are the ones who commit all the crimes. And that's actually not the case. But They frame your way of thinking to thinking it's certain groups. And it's pretty much blacks and browns. Because when a crime is committed by a black or brown person, their mugshot is almost 100% shown, and that shapes your thinking. However, if you really look at crime statistics, more white people commit crimes, more white people are homeless, more white people take welfare, and the majority of gun violence, except in certain areas, are committed by whites. And then, of course, there are some outlets that are just dedicated to alternative facts. We'll go with your Fox, your Newsmax, your OANs. They are dedicated to giving you their slant on every story, as opposed to the actual facts. Twist their story to fit a narrative, keep certain groups angry for whatever reason the case may be, and in fear for their lives. And honestly, if you live in suburbia, your biggest criminals are your teenagers. I've witnessed this personally. Your teenagers that you are not watching or that you let go of a friend's house and their parents are not watching, the kids go out, they start committing crimes. They start pulling your door handles. And for some reason, you people in suburbia will not lock your doors. Please lock your doors to your home, to your car, and shut your garage. And I've witnessed teenagers just walking around pulling door handles, just trying to rob a car. Or I've seen them twisting knobs on doors just to see if they can just walk in somebody's house. So to me, what you hear on the news is exaggerated and glamorized for news stories to sell clicks, to sell airtime, basically to make money. But the actual criminals, if you're in suburbia, are in your own home. So watch your teenagers, make sure everything's okay, be a parent. The next biggest fear mongering group, gaslighting, are politicians. They use fear and misinformation basically for votes and money. Money comes from lobbying groups like the NRA and other groups, anti abortion groups, blah, blah, blah. They use fear mongering just to stay in office. Because I'll be honest, there's no reason Lauren Boebert should be in office at all. But they use things like guns to keep you afraid. They want you to think that literally every criminal walking the street has a gun, so you need to have a gun. And what does that do for that industry? Keep sales up. Anytime somebody mentions wanting to get rid of automatic guns like the ARs or AKs, Uzis, they instantly go to the airwaves and start preaching that the government wants to take your guns. That's not the case. The case is we don't need guns that are just for murder. They're not for protection. They are just for murder. And as you can see, the vast majority of mass murders are committed with automatic, semi automatic guns. Another fear mongering tactic that's hot with politicians right now, pedophiles and the gay community. They're constantly preaching that gays are going to be grooming your kids, gays are raping your kids, and they're turning them to a lifestyle that you don't want your kid to go into. And the actuality is, when you look at churches and you look at the right, you will see a lot of pedophiles, guys caught with child pornography, priests, pastors, for child molestation, but yet they want to portray to the masses, and the masses do buy into it, that the gay community, LGBTQ, trans people are the ones after your kids. And that's simply not the case at all. But if you do an ounce of research, you'll see who's actually molesting these kids, kidnapping, taking them across state lines, putting them in sex work. Even Matt Gaetz, expecting he should be on trial pretty soon, or at least indicted. There's a lot of evidence that he transported a 16-year-old across state lines for sex purposes, but guess he's still in Congress, so nothing's going to happen for a little bit. Another fear-mongering tactic: minorities and immigration. They've got, again, this goes back to the news media as well as politicians. They've got you afraid of minorities, and that Mexicans and anyone from south of the border, it's coming over to take over the United States. First of all, if you listen to some of Trump's speeches, they mirror almost word for word what Alec Baldwin's character in The Black Klansman said about blacks. Trump said the same things about Mexicans coming across the border. Fact is, Mexicans or anyone from south of the border, they're just here to get a better life. And if you think about it, who fixes your roads? Who cuts your grass? Who cooks your food? Who builds that highway in July when it's 100 degrees? The same people you are calling murderers and rapists and drug dealers and whatever else. Now, that's not saying that they're not some, but that's everywhere. That's in every race. But to just blanket say that these people coming across the border are just natural criminals is wrong. It's inhuman and just flat out wrong. And then there's some really petty things that the right in particularly seems to be mad at and want to blame liberals. For example, stoves, gas stoves. Recently, they were upset that everybody was going to try to take their gas stove. The government was taking their gas stoves away. And all it was somebody just made a comment, hey, maybe we can do away with gas stoves or at least make them safer, because there's studies that are starting to show that they're causing illnesses. Nobody's trying to take away your gas stoves, just like nobody's trying to take away your guns or anything else. Mount Rushmore is another very petty argument that the right is preaching right now. There was one article that came out from the Sioux tribe that actually owns the land saying they would like their land back. That's all. And all over you saw, oh, now they want Mount Rushmore. Now the libs want Mount Rushmore. And they don't. Nobody's even really mentioned that except for that article. But somebody got onto it and just spread it like wildfire. Next thing you know, now they're coming for Mount Rushmore. No. M&Ms. Few people got upset about the way M&Ms were being portrayed. Damar Hamlin. Damar Hamlin is a cornerback that played for Buffalo Bills. He was hit in the chest, in the heart, at the exact right moment and basically died on the field. They had to resuscitate him twice, and now he's alive. But some people wanted to say that he wasn't, and that there was an actor at the game in the suites. That wasn't really him. Why was his face covered? His face was covered because it was freezing cold out there. He was in Buffalo. It's freezing cold. He wasn't playing. So he was bundled up like you should be. So the conspiracy theories started gaining some traction, and he had to come out and do a video about, well, he said it was about his charity and thanking people, but basically he was just letting people know he was alive and that conspiracy theory just needs to die. It's just stupid. People have too much time on their hands. Actually, I think there's too much airtime that people have to fill, whether it be on podcasts like this or 24-hour news stations. But people have run out of things to talk about and they have to fill time. They've sold that airtime, so they've got to fill it. And they glom on to stories like this. Damar Hamlin, everybody knows the guy is alive, but they still wanted to have a conspiracy about his death. Basically, they feed hatred and fear to the masses without any amount of evidence because they know the masses will eat it up and go with whatever they say as long as it fits the narrative they want to hear. People are refusing, even though we're walking around with these handheld computers, they refuse to take a minute to actually do a little research. And they just hear what they want to hear, and that's the gospel to them. But it's actually not. Just do an ounce of research, and you'll find that Damar Hamlin was alive. Nobody's trying to take your stoves. Nobody's trying to force M&Ms on you. Gays and trans people are not trying to molest your child, groom your child. That actually, again, is for the right. But one thing they do ignore are when another politician just flat out lies, commits crimes. They ignore those, like Trump, George Santos, Madison Cawthorn. Those lies are ignored to fit a certain narrative. People are still thinking Trump is a god. Madison Cawthorn, fortunately, the people of North Carolina voted him out because he was such a liar. And hopefully, George Santos will be booted out soon as well. I'll do a story about him and all of his lies in the coming days. And finally, last but not least, we've got social media. It's the lowest form of fear mongering, but it's just as powerful as the other two. People will create memes, they will create just posts with complete fabrication, but as long as it fits the narrative, it flies. No one does any fact checking again. They primarily take their cue from the politicians. So, for example, politician says they want to take your stove. Next thing you know, it's all over Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, anywhere they can post it. You're not taking my stove. Well, again, nobody's taking your stove. Also, social media is fuel for hatred. It's created a lot of violence that's unnecessary. It's created whole societies or sub societies of a different way of thinking that's not healthy for anyone. They are positive that everyone's trying to take America, and if a Democrat's running the country, it's no longer going to be a country, and they feel the need to be violent, to overthrow the government, like their attempt on January 6th. They feel the need to threaten the FBI and the DOJ and the CIA and the IRS because of social media and the influence it has on people, even though the information is false, just completely made up. Like recently, within the last year or so, we've had a couple people arrested for threats to the FBI. The FBI has been the federal police for many, many years. And in my lifetime, I've never seen it attacked so much as now because they are investigating Trump as well as several other people involved with Trump. But because Trump's their guy, they want to attack. And you can't tell me that January 6th wasn't organized by using social media. There's no way all these people could have coordinated. There wasn't like a phone tree or anything. There's no way they could have coordinated them all being there on that day. So I'm sure social media, whether it was Parler or whatever other right wing, even probably through Facebook messaging, that got the point to everyone that they're going to try to overthrow the government. And immediately after that, I did see myself a lot of TikTok posts, tweets, people being violent towards the government and the FBI, particularly. Fortunately, a lot of that's died down. However, all it takes is probably one indictment on Trump, and next thing you know, it picks back up again, all via social media. And before I go, just want to say one other thing about social media. When I look at Twitter, for example, I'm not going to go into the Elon Musk thing, but that's a story for another day as well. But when I look at Twitter, I see a bunch of kids standing in a room yelling at one another. It's not healthy, and nobody is ever up for a discussion. It's a bunch of gotcha moments. That's all it is. It's just screaming and yelling in text form and a bunch of gotcha moments. People that have to live off of this, I feel sorry for you. People that get their information this way, I feel sorry for you as well. Step out, do a little research, get the facts before you start yelling, I'm right, I'm right. Well, that will be my time for tonight. Again, thank you for choosing to listen to Driveway Talk. Again, I'm your host, Michael Willis. And please rate, review, follow, and or subscribe. Thank you and good night.